and I'm a sophomore at Bennett Academy. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to do this interview. Would you please provide your name and some of your background information about your education and career?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bill Pieroni, President and CEO of Accord. Accord is the global standard setting body for the insurance industry. We operate in 100 plus countries, have 36,000 members, and represent over 50% of all the world's premium. Prior to this, I was the Chief Operating Officer at Marsh McLennan, the largest insurance broker in the world, and spent time at State Farm, IBM as the Global Manager of Insurance, McKinsey and Accenture. I have a bachelor's degree in accounting from the University of Illinois and an MBA from Harvard University.
Now, I was wondering if I could ask you some questions about business ethics and how ethics have helped you answer questions or make decisions as a business leader.
Yes, please, go ahead. Happy to answer them.
Do you have a set of ethical principles that you use when faced with difficult questions or situations in your career?
Now, that's an interesting question. I have a set of embedded principles, right?
Mhm.
Clearly, they come from learnings, education, societal norms, all of the rest of that. But if I think about a formal framework, at the top of the list is transparency, right? Everything, I act in such a way that I assume everyone will see everything I do, right? And if you operate on that basis, it truly helps with ethical decisions, assuming that you care about your reputation and what others think. So at the top of it, I would say is transparency. Then clearly, closely related to that is honesty. So behave honestly with other individuals. Accountability and responsibility, really, assuming you're accountable, right, for the decisions you make and the outcomes that are there, and you're responsible for that and operating under that, and being fair. And lastly, and most importantly, is empathy, right? I think it's always easy to be self-centered, right? But to really have empathy for others and to understand that your decisions need to be considered through the vantage point of others. And I can tell you this, I've had reasonable success in my business career. It's a very small world. It's important to have these principles. Many decisions in life, if you think about prisoner dilemma decisions, they're repeated decisions, right? So behaving this way not only is a good thing for yourself, but I'd argue it's a good thing for you personally to behave this way, given that you're interacting with the same people over and over again. And it's important to recognize that it takes a lifetime to build a reputation, and you could destroy it through one bad decision. So understanding how important ethics are in business are critical. And obviously there's lots of issues you see in the press around this. But long-winded answer, I do have these principles. I never thought about them in an explicit way for a long time, but they almost need to become preternatural, embedded within who you are as a person. You won't always be able to. So think about it as muscle memory, right? You don't think about how to ride a bike because you've been doing it for so long. But if you embed these things in your life early on, as they say, habits, right, are critically important early on because they become who you are. So hopefully it's a long-winded answer, but hopefully that helps.
Oh, yes, it was. Now that you mentioned reputation, let's just say you performed one bad movement, and will that reputation follow you throughout the rest of your life, you'd say?
I would say when you're young, you don't realize how small this world is, how
Hmm.
small it is in terms of who you'll interact with. And then when you add in today's environment with social media, it is incredibly important, right? This isn't the 1800s where perhaps you engage in a less than ethical business transaction. You can get in a covered wagon and take yourself off into the West, right? The reality is this world is small. I can't emphasize enough, but if you only behave in an ethical way because you feel that it will hurt you in a business setting, yes, that's okay, but I would rather coach people to behave in an ethical way because it's the right way to live your life. And if there's one lesson I've learned is the true meaning of life is that it ends. Everybody, what's the point? It ends. So how are you going to live your life? Helping others, doing something that matters. Look, we've all won the lottery. We're born in the United States and we've emigrated to the United States. We've all done well, right? It matters how you act. These things come back, not only in terms of reputation, but how you feel about yourself, your self-image, your self-esteem, and what you've done. I assure you, behaving ethically pays not only business benefits, to be sure, but personal ones as well, and reputation, the ability to walk around and see people again and meet with them and have them not worried about being embarrassed. It's a much better way to live your life, both economically, but also spiritually. So I'm really a strong proponent of it.
All right, thank you. Would you be able to provide an example of a situation in your business career that you faced in which you applied your principles?
Well, I tell you, you have to live these things every day,
Uh-huh.
right? You have to live them every single day. So literally every decision I make, whether it's launching a new product, hiring an individual, unfortunately letting someone else go, developing a new relationship with a supplier group, I think you can't compartmentalize ethical behavior, right?
Mhm.
You need to make it part of everything you do to such a point that you don't even think about it anymore, right? Only because it's just how you act. Now, I will tell you, as you continue to climb throughout your career, you will have decisions that increasingly are difficult, right? In terms of holding on to your ethics, because early on, others are directing you. So they may ask you to do something that you're uncomfortable with, but ultimately, you're the one making the decision, asking others, right? So when I look to where CEOs have real challenges or C-level executives, I've got a good one that creates real difficulty. As a CEO, let's say of a publicly traded company or even a private company, your boss are the shareholders, the owners. So if you're not self-employed, right, and you're working for shareholders, right, so it's not your company, you work, someone owns the company, clearly those owners want you oftentimes to maximize the value of the firm, to maximize cash flow, to maximize the ultimate sales price of the stock or the company in general. While at the longer term, you're trying to build a company, you're trying to help people pay their mortgages, put their children to school, right? Trying to be a good member of the community, right? Doing the right things. And I'm not saying they're always diametrically opposed, but when you think about immediate near term types of benefits to longer term positioning, right? They can create real challenges here. And I would say, as a CEO, those are some of the more challenging ones. How do you deal with the near-term immediate need to generate cash flow and business value while simultaneously trying to actually do the right thing over the long term and care about other stakeholders outside of it? It's a situation where you see a lot of European companies actually in their mission statement and vision statement, they include things like community, employees, competitors, customers. We've been a bit slower in the
Mhm.
US to adopt those things, but I'm hopeful that ultimately we will, right, within the US. But those are the types of dilemmas that as you go through your career, you're going to have to deal with, and all the more important that ethics and value system permeate who you are.
Okay, thank you. Now, do you think that any particular business question, decision, or situation represents a difficult ethical issue?
Yeah, I think, do you make a decision today that increases your earnings by a penny or a dollar or $1 million, but create uncertainty, ethical dilemmas later on, right? Only because you as a CEO are serving someone. So I think it's a real challenge, right? And when you look to some countries around the world that maybe don't have as strong an ethical consideration in developing markets, you see near-term decisions made, maybe polluting the environment, maybe mistreating employees, maybe selling suboptimal products. Why? Because it allows them to make money today, but
Mhm.
has longer term issues. I think those types of decisions, if you don't have that strong moral compass and set of values, are real challenging. And I would argue that in some of those markets, if they don't have an intrinsic set of values around ethics, it's going to create real challenges for them to continue to grow over the long term. So that short-term thinking, while there's pressure to produce, I think without a strong ethics framework leads to long-term downfall. I believe that. They may do okay today, right? But it creates a real challenge. But, one could argue if I don't do it, they're just going to fire me and have someone else do it. So
Right.
I want to keep my job. Now, fortunately, we're in the United States. Fortunately, I've been a part of organizations that had very high level of ethics. I've never been personally put in that situation, but clearly you can see in the marketplace that there are, right? Which I think is a good lesson. choose your employers carefully, right? Don't put yourself in an employer situation to where you feel the organization will compel you or may even ask you to do something that's against your value system. When you approach your first employer or your subsequent employer, look at them through an ethical framework, right? Make sure you're joining somewhere that isn't going to put you in that kind of situation. It's very important. And I've been always done that. I would never have joined an organization that would put me in that situation. I've been blessed to not have been put in that one, but I think it's an important lesson.
Mhm. Now, do you have any advice that you could provide for me as I think about ethical issues that I may face one day in my career?
Well, first, choose your employer carefully,
Right.
right? And I will tell you, mistakes can be made, but when you make a mistake, act. When you know you need to act, act. Don't think it will get better, right? So that I would say. I'd say your values and your ethics and the morals and everything you bring, you have to work to keep it, right? So that it becomes part of that muscle memory, as I said. So it's real work keeping that. I would then say empathize. Always maintain the ability to empathize. Empathize with your boss. Maybe he's frustrated. Maybe he's not thinking right. Empathize with your customer. Maybe they're scared. Maybe they don't want to pay. Maybe they don't have the money. Empathize with your coworkers. Think in a 360-degree way. Don't lose the ability to empathize. I think it's too easy for us to become very self-centered, right? And only focus on ourselves. And I think understand your personal brand. Covet your brand, manage your brand to mean that you're a good person that does the right thing. Yes, you're smart and hardworking to be sure, but really do everything you can to maintain your personal brand of integrity. As I said, it's a lifetime to build it and it can be destroyed. And the last thing I'd say, yes, we all want a good living. We all want to provide for our families. But in the end, the meaning of life is that it ends. And can you look back on a career of behaving correctly, of developing other people, of doing the right thing, of knowing you could hold your head high in the business community because you've always done the right thing? And I would argue that's going to be ultimately more important to you. You won't look back on a career and say, gosh, I wish I had cheated. I wish I had done that wrong. I'd have more money. That's not the type of regret you'll have. It's if you do fail, if you don't achieve your real objectives of doing the right thing in all situations, not most, right? So I think that's really important. And lastly, I'd say guard against moral relativism, right? So, well, everybody's doing it in the organization. I'm not as bad as them. You need to have your own value system. Be very careful about applying relative ethics for an organization. You'll always find the lowest common denominator where people don't behave correctly and rationalize that you are. Seek out organizations with very high levels of ethics. Join them and aspire to be as good as you can be. So I think it's long-winded. There's lots of advice in there, but that's what I would want to tell you and your classmates.
No, that was very useful. Like, that would be amazing. Thank you so much for that advice. Like, I'm excited to maybe apply that one day. And once again, thank you for your time. This has been very helpful.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a great day, Mr. Pieroni.
All right, my apologies for being late to the call. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Oh, it's fine. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Goodbye.